The rain came down hard that Tuesday evening, drumming against the pavement like 1,000 angry fingers. Amara Kingsley stood on the sidewalk outside what used to be her home, a modest 2-story house in the heart of Newark, New Jersey, watching through the living room window as her husband Daniel laughed with another woman, Vanessa Cole, the mistress who had slowly, methodically replaced her in every corner of Daniel's life. The suitcase at Amara's feet was everything she owned now. 3 years of marriage, reduced to one battered piece of luggage and a heart that felt like shattered glass. "You can't just throw me out," Amara had pleaded an hour earlier, standing in the doorway of her own bedroom while Daniel packed her things with cold efficiency. His hands, the same hands that had once held hers at their wedding, now moved with calculated cruelty. "Watch me," Daniel had replied, not even bothering to look at her. "The house is in my name. You brought nothing to this marriage, Amara. Absolutely nothing." Vanessa had appeared then, wearing Amara's favorite silk robe, sipping coffee from Amara's favorite mug. "Oh, honey, don't make this harder than it needs to be," she'd cooed, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Some women just aren't meant to keep their men. It's not personal." But it was personal. Every humiliating second of it. Now, soaked to the bone, Amara walked the streets with nowhere to go. Her phone had 11 missed calls from her mother, but she couldn't face those conversations yet. The "I told you so" and the worried sighs. Her friends had slowly disappeared during the marriage. Daniel had made sure of that, isolating her one coffee date at a time, one canceled plan after another. The shelters were full. The cheap motels wanted deposits she didn't have. Her bank account showed $47.23. Money Daniel had, generously, left her after draining their joint account the week before. She found herself at a 24-hour diner on Market Street, nursing a cup of coffee she could barely afford. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and a tired waitress named Gloria refilled her cup without asking. "Rough night, baby?" Gloria asked gently, her kind eyes taking in Amara's wet clothes and defeated posture. "Rough life," Amara whispered back. As she stirred sugar into her third cup, something crinkled in her jacket pocket. She pulled out an old, faded envelope, one she'd shoved in there months ago and forgotten about. Inside was a bank card, plain and simple, with Prestige Ridge Bank embossed across the front. Her grandmother's card. Margaret Okoye, the woman everyone called Mama Maggie, who had raised Amara after her parents died, who had cleaned office buildings at night and sold vegetables at the farmer's market on weekends. Mama Maggie, who had passed away 2 years ago in a small apartment in Brooklyn, leaving behind nothing but memories, handwritten recipes, and apparently this bank card. Amara remembered the day her grandmother had pressed it into her palm, eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Keep this safe, Amara. When you need it most, it will speak for you." At the time, Amara had assumed it was just an old woman's sentiment, perhaps a card with $50 left on it. A final gift from someone who had so little to give. But what if? The question hung in the air like possibility itself. What if there was something on this card? Even $100 would get her a room for the night, time to think, to plan. She had nothing left to lose. Gloria noticed her staring at the card. "That a debit card, honey?" "I think so. It was my grandmother's." "Well, Prestige Ridge Bank is fancy." That's that big building downtown, all glass and marble. They don't do regular banking. That's private wealth management stuff. Gloria leaned in conspiratorially. My sister's husband works security there. Says people who bank there have money that makes money, if you know what I mean. Amara almost laughed. The idea of Mama Maggie, with her threadbare sweaters and clipped grocery coupons, banking at Prestige Ridge seemed absurd. But desperation makes gamblers of us all. The rain had stopped by the time Amara reached the bank's downtown location. Even at night, the building was impressive, 40 stories of steel and glass reflecting the city lights. The main entrance was closed, but there was a 24-hour ATM vestibule on the side. Amara's hands shook as she inserted the card. The machine whirred, asking for a PIN. She tried her grandmother's birthday. Nothing. She tried her own birthday. Nothing. Then she remembered Mama Maggie's favorite number. The one she played in the lottery every week. 7734. The screen went black. Then it flickered. Then something happened that Amara would replay in her mind 1,000 times. The ATM screen displayed a message she'd never seen before. Account verification required. Remain at this location. Assistance en route. Before Amara could remove the card, she heard rapid footsteps. A security guard appeared. Then another. A woman in an expensive suit hurried toward her, heels clicking urgently against marble. Miss, please don't leave, the woman said breathlessly. I'm Jennifer Chun, Senior Account Manager. We need you to come inside immediately. I'm sorry, I just wanted to check. Please. Jennifer's voice was urgent, almost afraid. Mr. Holloway is on his way. Who's Mr. Holloway? Jennifer stared at her as if she'd asked who the president was. Edward Holloway, the CEO. Within minutes, Amara found herself in a private elevator, ascending to floors she didn't know banks had, watching the city shrink below her through glass walls. The executive floor of Prestige Ridge Bank existed in a different reality than the streets Amara had just walked. Soft lighting, artwork that probably cost more than houses, and silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. Jennifer Chin guided her into a conference room where a silver-haired man in his 60s sat at the head of a long table, flanked by 4 other executives who looked like they'd been woken from sleep. Edward Holloway rose when she entered, his expression unreadable. Miss Kingsley, he said, extending his hand. Or should I say, Miss Okoye? It's Kingsley now. Well, it was. I'm getting divorced. Amara didn't know why she said it, except that honesty seemed like the only currency she had left. Edward nodded slowly. Please sit. Can we get you anything? Coffee? Water? Answers, Amara said, surprised by her own boldness. Why am I here? That card was my grandmother's. Margaret Okoye. She died 2 years ago. Something flickered across Edward's face. Was it grief? Guilt? He opened a leather folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed a younger version of him, maybe 30 years ago, standing beside 3 other people outside this very building on what looked like opening day. One of them was unmistakably her grandmother, younger but with those same fierce, intelligent eyes. Mama Maggie wore an elegant business suit Amara had never seen before. Your grandmother, Edward began carefully, was one of 4 founding investors of Prestige Ridge Bank in 1994. She contributed significant capital, money she'd saved and invested brilliantly over decades. Margaret Okoye was not the poor woman everyone believed her to be. She was brilliant with money, almost supernaturally so. By the time we opened these doors, she owned 20% of this institution. The room tilted. Amara gripped the table's edge. That's impossible. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment. She worked 2 jobs. She chose to live that way, Edward interrupted gently. Margaret had her reasons. She'd seen what wealth did to her own family in Nigeria, the fights, the betrayals. She wanted to live simply, honestly. But she was never poor, Amara. And according to her will, her shares passed to you. You own 20% of Prestige Ridge Bank. The other executives shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a stern woman named Patricia Reeves, spoke up. Edward, we've discussed this. The original shareholder agreement from 1994 is missing. Without documentation. The account exists, Edward said firmly. Her share certificates are in our vault. The quarterly dividends have been accumulating for 2 years. How much? Amara whispered. The shares are currently valued at approximately $47 million. The accumulated dividends total another $8.2 million. The room spun. $55 million. While she'd been begging Daniel for grocery money, rationing her own meals, apologizing for existing. She'd been an heiress. Mama Maggie, who had taught her to make soup from leftovers and never waste anything, had been secretly wealthy. Why didn't she tell me? Edward's expression softened. She planned to, but she got sick faster than anyone expected. I visited her 2 weeks before she passed. She made me promise that when you used this card, I would tell you everything personally. She said you'd need it when the time was right. He paused. Margaret also warned me that people would try to deny your claim. She was right to worry. As if on cue, Patricia spoke again. We'll need extensive verification. DNA testing, legal documentation, a full audit of the estate. These things take time. Months, potentially. Funny? Said a new voice from the doorway. How verification suddenly matters when it's convenient. A young black man in his late 20s entered, carrying a messenger bag. He had intelligent eyes behind modern glasses and an air of quiet defiance. Tund Lawson, financial analyst. He introduced himself, ignoring the glares from the other executives. He placed a manila folder in front of Amara. This is what they don't want you to see. Inside were bank records, meeting minutes, and another photograph. This one showing her grandmother with Edward Holloway and a third man Amara recognized immediately. Daniel's father, Robert Kingsley. Her blood ran cold. Your grandmother didn't just co-found this bank, Tund explained, his voice low and urgent. She discovered that certain board members were using bank funds for illegal lending schemes. When she threatened to report them in 1998, they forced her out, made her sign away her active participation in exchange for keeping her shares. They thought she'd sell eventually, but she never did. She held on, waiting. He looked directly at Amara. Your marriage to Daniel Kingsley wasn't coincidence. His family has been trying to access your grandmother's shares for decades. The revelation hit like ice water. Her entire marriage had been a setup. Daniel had pursued her, charmed her, isolated her. all while probably knowing exactly who her grandmother was. That's a serious accusation, Patricia said coldly. Young man, you're overstepping your position. Am I? Tund pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. Because I have emails between Daniel Kingsley and board members from 3 years ago, right around when he started dating Amara. Subject line: Okoye situation, marriage approach. Edward Holloway's face went pale. Where did you get those? Does it matter? Tund looked at Amara. They've been planning this. The isolation, the divorce, the humiliation. It's all designed to break you, make you desperate enough to sell the shares cheap just to survive. But you need to know something else. He hesitated, then continued. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Someone's been erasing records, destroying evidence. The original shareholder agreement disappeared from the vault last week. And 2 days ago, my apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen except my backup drives. His voice dropped to a whisper. Your grandmother was betrayed, Miss Kingsley, and you're standing in her exact place. Whatever you do, don't trust anyone here. Patricia stood abruptly. This meeting is over. Mr. Lawson, you're suspended pending investigation. Miss Kingsley will be in touch through proper legal channels. But Edward held up his hand. Amara stays. The rest of you leave. Now. When the room cleared except for Edward and Tund, the CEO sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 64 years. Margaret warned me this would happen. She said when you came, the vultures would circle. He met Amara's eyes. I failed your grandmother once. I won't fail you. But you need to understand, some of the people who betrayed her are still on this board. And they're more powerful than you can imagine. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Back away while you still can. Your grandmother didn't listen either. The next 72 hours moved like a fever dream. Amara stayed in a hotel suite Edward arranged, paid for by the bank, while lawyers argued over her identity and claim. Tund disappeared the morning after their meeting. His phone disconnected, his apartment empty, his office desk cleared out as if he'd never existed. The police said there was no evidence of foul play, just a young man who'd quit his job and left town. But Amara knew better. She'd seen the fear in his eyes, the urgency in his warning. Daniel struck first. A lawsuit appeared on the hotel room desk, delivered by a smirking process server. Daniel Kingsley versus Amara Okoye Kingsley, alleging theft of confidential financial documents, corporate espionage, and fraud. The legal language was dense, but the message was clear. He was painting her as a con artist who'd somehow fabricated her grandmother's legacy to steal from the bank. Vanessa's father, she learned, was a prominent judge. The pieces all connected in ugly ways. You look terrible, said a woman's voice from the hotel room doorway. Amara spun around, heart pounding, but it was only Gloria from the diner, holding a takeout bag and looking completely out of place in the luxury suite. Jennifer from the bank called me, said you might need a friend. Also said to tell you the food here is probably bugged. So I brought you something safe to eat. It was such an absurd statement that Amara almost laughed. Instead, she burst into tears. Gloria held her like Mama Maggie used to, letting her cry until there was nothing left. Baby girl, Gloria said finally. My mama used to say that when powerful people come for you, It's because you got something they can't take by asking nice. So what you gonna do? Run or fight? Amara thought of her grandmother, scrubbing office floors at night while secretly owning part of the building, living small to stay safe, but never surrendering what was rightfully hers. Fight, she whispered, but I don't know how. Her phone rang then, a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. The voice on the other end was distorted, digitally altered. Miss Okoye, your grandmother left you more than shares. She left you a weapon. Storage Unit 734 at Secure Vault on Broad Street. The key is taped under the soap dish in her old apartment. The landlord never cleaned properly. Inside the unit is everything you need. But move fast. They're watching. The line went dead. Gloria raised an eyebrow. Well, we got a field trip. Getting into Mama Maggie's old apartment was easier than expected. The new tenant was kind. A Haitian nurse who remembered the sweet old lady who used to live there. The key was exactly where the mysterious caller said it would be, wrapped in yellowing tape under the soap dish. At the storage facility, Amara's hands shook as she unlocked Unit 734. Inside were boxes, dozens of them, organized meticulously, labeled in her grandmother's precise handwriting. Board Minutes 1994 to 1998. Shareholder agreements, originals, financial irregularities, correspondence, threats. There were ledgers, photographs, recorded conversations on old cassette tapes, and a leather journal filled with Mama Maggie's neat script. The first entry was dated 3 years ago, right before she got sick. If you're reading this, Amara, then they came for you like I knew they would. My darling girl, you are stronger than you know. Everything you need is here. Make them answer for what they did. Not just to me, to all the people they hurt with their greed. I stayed quiet to protect you. Now it's time to be loud. Amara and Gloria spent the night photographing everything, uploading it to 3 different cloud services, and emailing copies to journalists, the SEC, and the FBI. By morning, the story was already breaking. A financial blogger picked it up first, then the New York Times ran with it. Prestige Ridge Bank scandal. Founding investor allegedly forced out. Evidence of illegal lending emerges. The emergency board meeting was called for that afternoon. Amara arrived in her grandmother's old business suit, the one from the photograph, altered to fit her. She carried one box, the most damning evidence, the original shareholder agreement everyone claimed didn't exist, complete with all 4 signatures including Robert Kingsley's. Patricia Reeves tried to block her at the door. You have no right to be here. 20% says otherwise, Amara replied, her voice steady. Let me in, or I call CNN. They're waiting outside. The boardroom went silent when she entered. 12 faces, some curious, some hostile, all afraid. Daniel sat next to his father in the corner, his expression twisted with rage. Edward Holloway sat at the head of the table, looking older than ever. Amara placed the box on the table with a heavy thud. My name is Amara Okoye, she began, her voice carrying across the room. Some of you knew my grandmother, Margaret Okoye. Some of you betrayed her. All of you tried to erase her. But she kept every receipt, every email, every recorded conversation. She pulled out the shareholder agreement. This is the original document you all claimed was lost. Funny how it was in my grandmother's storage unit all along. She knew you'd try to destroy it, so she kept it safe. Patricia started to speak, but Amara cut her off. I'm not finished. This ledger shows how board members approved loans to shell companies they secretly owned. This correspondence shows how my grandmother was threatened when she tried to report it. And these bank records, she pulled out a thick folder, show how my ex-husband Daniel Kingsley embezzled over $2 million from corporate accounts over the past 3 years, including funds he used to purchase a house and support his mistress. Daniel shot to his feet. That's a lie. You have no proof. Account number 7734 to 9821. Daniel, that's your shadow account. The one you thought nobody knew about. Amara's voice was ice. My grandmother's favorite number. She discovered it 6 months before she died and left me the documentation. You married me to get close to her shares, but you got greedy. Started stealing on your own. Robert Kingsley's face went ashen. Edward Holloway's hands trembled as he examined the documents Amara spread across the table. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Bank statements, wire transfers, forged signatures, a paper trail so clear even a first-year law student could follow it. Motion to vote, Edward said quietly. All in favor of removing Patricia Reeves, Robert Kingsley, and Daniel Kingsley from this board and referring them for criminal prosecution? The vote was unanimous except for the Kingsleys' 2 votes. Motion to suspend the Holloway family's voting shares pending investigation into their knowledge of these irregularities? Edward voted for his own suspension, 7-5. Motion to recognize Amara Okoye as the rightful heir to Margaret Okoye's 20% stake, and to elect her as interim chairwoman of Prestige Ridge Bank, 9-3. The gavel came down. 3 months later, Amara sat in her grandmother's old office, now restored and renamed the Margaret Okoye Leadership Suite. The bank had been restructured, cleaned out, rebuilt on transparency. Daniel was awaiting trial. Patricia had fled to the Cayman Islands. Tund had been found safe. He'd gone into hiding but returned when he heard the news, and Amara had hired him as chief compliance officer. On her desk sat a framed photo of Mama Maggie and a card Gloria had given her that first morning. Some women are born queens. Others are forged in fire. Either way, wear your crown. Amara looked out over the city, the same streets where she'd walked homeless and broken just months before. She thought about texting Daniel, something petty and triumphant, but Mama Maggie wouldn't have done that. Instead, she opened her laptop and started drafting a new policy. Interest-free emergency loans for women escaping domestic situations. No credit check required. The first grant would be named after a diner waitress with a kind heart. Outside, the city hummed with possibility. Inside, a woman who'd been told she was nothing proved she was everything. Sometimes the greatest legacies aren't loud. They're patient seeds planted in quiet soil, waiting for the right season to bloom. Your worth isn't determined by who walks away, but by who you become when you choose to stand. Like Amara learned from Mama Maggie's silent strength, true power often wears humble clothes. When the world tries to convince you you're small, remember, even hidden roots can move mountains. You've got this. Your story isn't over. It's just found its courage. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true-to-life tales. Share this with someone who needs to remember their strength today, and drop a comment telling us, What would you do if you discovered a hidden legacy? Let's keep this conversation going.